Due to the graphic nature of this content, it may not be appropriate for some viewers.
Growing a finger from scratch, cartilage, bone, and muscle cells. A beating engineered heart valve, learning how to pump blood before it's implanted. Chances are you've never seen anything quite like this. It looks like science fiction. What you're seeing is not in the realm of fantasy, though. It's happening now, and it's poised to usher in a new age of medicine. At the Wake Forest Institute for Regenerative Medicine, Dr. Anthony Atala's lab is the largest in the world manufacturing body parts. They're not prosthetics, they're not robotics, they are living organs built from scratch. They're yours, made up of tissue identical to the rest of your body.
This is actually trachea, windpipes that were engineered, and you can see here the rings.
One of the goals of regenerative medicine is to provide organs for the hundreds of thousands waiting for transplants worldwide. This lab grows more than 22 different organs and tissues. Regenerative medicine uses a patient's own cells to harness the body's ability to regrow.
Every single cell in your body has all the genetic information to make a whole new human being, a whole new you, if you will. So it's just a matter of turning on the right switches and turning off the right switches to make sure that you create a normal tissue or organ. It's really very much like baking a layered cake. You're taking a small piece of tissue from the patient, you grow the cells outside the body, and then you start layering the cells, one layer at a time, into a mold. And you see how she's actually seeding the ear mold with the cells. And then you're going to place that ear mold with the cells in this oven-like device that has the same conditions as a human body, 37 degrees centigrade, 95% oxygen, and then 2 weeks later you come out with the final product. And you're actually seeing the engineered ear itself.
One of the reasons regenerative technologies are ideal is that they use a patient's own cells, and by doing so, avoid any issue of rejection. The patient's body recognizes the cells as its own, prompting it to continue the growth process that the cells have already started.
So these could be used for small blood vessels.
The scaffold on which the cells grow is biodegradable. It dissolves within the body once the patient's cells have formed new tissue over its shape.
We basically are exercising the muscle prior to them being implanted.
It takes just 6 to 8 weeks to create a body part, from growing the cells outside the body to returning the organ or tissue to the body. Atala's team hopes to bring blood vessel and heart valve technologies to patients in the next few years.
You can actually see it pumping away. And if you look at the top, you can actually see the leaflets opening and closing. We're actually at this point exercising them. So we're giving them the same conditions that they would have in the body. So when you put this in the heart, they'll know exactly what to do already.
Atala's impetus to create organs was born out of a quandary he faced as a pediatric urologist.
We were doing procedures in children that were actually over 100 years old, and there were multiple complications.
Reconstruction of bladders involved using a piece of intestine, a tissue designed to absorb rather than just excrete like a bladder.
There's nothing really more devastating for a surgeon than being in the operating room with a patient and knowing that the best that you can offer is not the best treatment. And there had to be a better solution. Couldn't we just create a new organ using the patient's own cells?
That simple question, from a deep desire to find a better alternative, paved the way for the world's first successful human transplant of a laboratory-grown organ.
Ready for school?
Yeah, I just had to go get my crutch from the front.
One of these pioneering patients is Caitlin McNamara in Middletown, Connecticut. Now 20 years old, Caitlin was born with spina bifida, a congenital birth defect that causes incomplete closure of the spine, and in her case resulted in poor bladder function.
Her bladder would burst, so with the pressures that came out, even a diaper couldn't hold that. So she'd be wet in school and the kids would tease her.
The issue was more than just embarrassing accidents for Caitlin. Her kidneys were at risk of severe damage. 9 years ago, Caitlin and 6 other patients received bladder transplants from Dr. Atala's pioneering regenerative procedure. Their new bladders grown from their own cells outside the body. 20-year-old Caitlin and the other patients now have what doctors call long-term success, almost a decade after the surgery.
You want a quality of life for yourself. I was embarrassed to leave the house because the minute I would go out, I would have an accident. And then I would have to come back home. So I just really absolutely was like shutting people out and staying at home. Yeah, I put it back in the white box. Since I've had this surgery, I'm not like the shy person. I don't hide out in my room anymore. I'm always out and going and doing more things. I'm here on a college campus. I didn't actually really think that I was gonna make it to college, and how are you? I'm a senior in college.
It gave her a quality of life. When she got to be a junior in high school, she had this elaborate, like, red carpet dress for her junior prom. And it was because she said, I can wear it. I don't have diapers. I don't have anything. I can be glamorous. So she summed it up that way. And what more can a mom want, right?
This is the dress that I wore. This is also the one that I fell in love with the first time I saw it. Before my surgery, I would never have been able to wear this dress.
If you put the glass close to it, you know.
Back at Wake Forest, Dr. Atala ponders the future.
We currently are treating patients one at a time, but with current technologies that are being developed, we hope to be able to treat thousands of patients at one time. Over the next couple of decades, you'll be able to really mass produce a lot of these tissues and organs.
But for Caitlin, the procedure has already delivered a future she couldn't have imagined.
Yes, the one you've seen already. I couldn't resist pulling it out again.
Do you need a napkin? Yeah?
My name is Monica Cardenas.
Now look at Emma, that's beautiful.
My name is Marco, and we have 4 kids together. Daniela, Emma, Victoria, and the only boy, JJ. When JJ had the accident, we heard a big scream, and we just saw blood everywhere. We recognized that actually that he was missing a piece of his finger. There were kids playing. There was actually a kid. Unfortunately, he pushed my son into a dark room, and when he closed the door, he closed it on the JJ's finger, and he got amputated. We got to the emergency room. Turns out that it couldn't put the piece back.
After we came from the hospital, I was thinking, you know, what else we can do. And then I started searching for doctors or reconstructions in fingers.
My wife said, honey, come over, take a look. This news report about this man that grew his finger back. This has to work on JJ. As a parent, we always want the best for our kids, and you know that was the answer that we were looking for. What we did was we closed the computer for a second and we prayed. And the answer came.
This is where the answer came, at the McGowan Institute for Regenerative Medicine at the University of Pittsburgh, and the work of Dr. Stephen Badylak.
So how long did that take?
Badylak's team is taking a different approach to regenerative medicine for tissue and organ replacement. They're trying to trick the body into actually repairing itself.
We grow body parts. The simple version of that is that we harness the signals that all of us have in our body that tell us to regrow tissues rather than to form scar tissue.
To coax our bodies to do that, Dr. Badylak has been experimenting with a substance called ECM, or extracellular matrix. He says ECM could persuade virtually every tissue in the body to regenerate.
This is dried, freeze-dried, right? And now if we put this in water, it takes on the characteristics almost like native tissue. It feels like a normal tissue, but it's got no cells in it, but it's loaded with information.
When ECM is applied on a wound, it instructs the body to rebuild instead of scar by recruiting stem cells. Once at the injury site, the stem cells transform into the specific cells that are missing, for example, muscle cells, continuing the growth process just as if you were still in the womb.
A powder is just a chopped up sheet, basically. It can fill a defect, and it gets absorbed very quickly because the pieces are so small. What we want to do is to be able to treat conditions that right now have no treatment or inadequate treatment. If you have esophageal cancer, which is one of the most rapidly increasing cancers in the world, right now the solution for that is to take your esophagus out. They then pull the stomach up through your chest and attach it to what's left of your esophagus. That's the standard of care for these patients, so it's unacceptable. So regenerative medicine says we can do something better.
Doctors approached Dr. Badlak for use of ECM when an elderly patient faced the prospect of this complicated procedure last year. After removing the cancerous portion of the esophagus, the surgeon inserted ECM in a medical sleeve which lined the remaining part of the tissue. Doctors believe that the result is due to ECM.
And this is extremely tough.
Instead of a scarred esophagus, they believe ECM prompted the cells to create a new lining. The patient is now cancer-free, a result which paves the way for a clinical trial in the near future. ECM is found in the intestines and bladder of humans and animals, but for medical purposes, it's harvested from the urinary bladder of a pig, a throwaway product of the agricultural industry.
What would be normally discarded can be, if treated appropriately, turned into a medical device that's in a surgery room treating patients that need new muscle tissue. That's really kind of remarkable, isn't it?
Somebody closed the door, shut the door in my finger.
Up all night after their son JJ's fingertip was sliced off, Monita and Marco Cardenas found Dr. Badlak on his institute's website. Convinced Dr. Badlak's powder could help JJ regrow his finger, they set off on the 5-hour drive to Pittsburgh.
We drove up there knowing that they were going to help us. Some kind of way they were going to help us. We just went there, drove there with the assurance that something will come up.
Because the powder was not yet available to the public, they were initially turned away. But after a few setbacks, the Cardenas family arrived back home with instructions for applying the ECM powder to JJ's finger under the supervision of their own physician.
Here's a family. They trusted that we were going to help them. They drove from Baltimore to Pittsburgh, right before Christmas, hoping someone's going to be here. How do you say no to somebody like that?
We just apply the powder with this, put the powder in the stick, and then we just put the powder in top of the finger. Once the powder is in place, we put the wet gauze. We just cover the finger so that way the powder is moist. The cut on his finger was coming from here all the way down here. It's going to be in a diagonal. And it would just completely amputated from that part right there up. In 10 weeks, we got a very good results.
In 2 days, I remember, that was amazing, This one was the first picture that was taken before the treatment. For me, it was so amazing to see after the second treatment, we start looking the shape of the finger.
The new skin is actually pink. On the second day, we saw that change, and we were like, wow, it's growing back. About 4 days after the treatment, we see very huge progress because we could actually see that the nail is actually coming in place. This is going to be around the 6th week where we have half of the nail in place already in the finger. And the nail in the beginning was very jelly texture, but then starting the 9th week actually it became solid, very, very hard nail. And then by the 10th week, looking at the back of the finger, it's been sealed. So everything it's been back in place.
In just 10 weeks, JJ's finger went from sliced off to completely regrown, fingernail and all, without a scar, without any trace of the accident.
From the day 1 to the 10th week right now,
It is a dramatic change. I'm looking at him right now. I mean, he's just normal finger. I mean, he moves the finger, he plays with it, he plays PlayStation with it.
I won!
He plays with the sisters and he's just normal with his finger back.
It's still early days. Clinical trials of ECM for various applications are underway, with others in the planning stages. But at least this family is convinced.
it's just a miracle. I mean, pictures, you know, say 1,000 things. From looking at day 1 picture to what it is right now, it's just a miracle.
U.S. Staff Sergeant Shiloh Harris likely imagined the possibility of violence while on patrol south of Baghdad, but probably not the twist of fate that would propel him into a groundbreaking realm of science.
We got called to investigate a possible IED in our area. And my truck got blasted with a roadside bomb. Me and the driver were the only two that survived. It's a miracle any of us survived. It was just, I was thinking to myself, I was like, man, is this the end of who I was? This patch, my sergeant major found on the ground after the blast.
Harris's uniform and body armor melted to his skin. Over 30% of his body was burned.
I didn't have a nose, no ears. It was definitely life-changing. Very life-changing.
But it would be on the site of one of his missing fingers that doctors would perform the first surgery of its kind. 2 years ago, Harris became the first person in the world to have ECM surgically implanted into his body. Doctors reopened the wound on his finger to the bone, packed ECM in the tissue, and closed it back up again. Although the growth in Harris's finger wasn't significant, it did grow ½ an inch, and he says it works better and has more feeling.
There you go. Go up. See that right there? That wasn't there before.
Dr. Stephen Wolf is Chief of Clinical Trials at the U.S. Army's Institute of Surgical Research in San Antonio, Texas.
What happens in biology, it turns out that, you know, salamanders do this all the time, right? And we all grow stuff in our mother's womb, right? I mean, the signals there, all the messages are there to do this.
With the collaboration of the University of Pittsburgh, Wolf is launching the first official clinical trial of ECM.
Good. Just want to look at that glute. Fire that glute, man. Drive it up.
And the participants are American soldiers, recently back from the battlefield with severe wounds.
There were some folks that said, hey, we got this stuff that we think can regrow fingers and muscles and stuff like that. And being a researcher, I was intrigued and said, I wonder if that's going to work. Is it magic or something? No, it turns out that there is a biological basis to it. And said, okay, well, I think if we can do this without hurting anybody and see if it actually helps them, and this is something that's going to be, you know, a game changer, if you will.
The ball ain't gonna go nowhere.
With military amputees returning home regularly from wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, the U.S. military is highly motivated to pursue that goal. The Pentagon is investing $250 million in regenerative research for soldiers with battle wounds, hoping to regrow muscle and burn skin and develop transplant technology for lost limbs.
We're not talking about old people that, you know, have lots of vascular problems and other things like that. And so they're young people who are likely to be, if there's going to be an effect, it's going to be in them.
Marine Corporal Isaias Hernandez can testify to experiencing an effect. Like Harris, Hernandez received ECM treatment before the official clinical trial now underway.
Basically what they said, it's like a muscle fertilizer. Put it in, it helps it grow back. So tried it. They said the worst thing that could happen is no gains, but no harm, no foul.
His quadricep was so severely wounded by a mortar round that amputation was the likely option. Instead, the Institute tested the power of ECM. After making an incision on Hernandez's leg, Dr. Wolf lifted the muscle, applied ECM, and then closed the wound back up.
Did the gel sheets, the little scar. That's where they cut it open, packed it in. That little mound you can see there now, that's where it's starting to build back up again. Because before it was like an elbow joint, sunk in, that's starting to build up again. So it's pretty obvious.
Bring your leg up a little bit higher.
Hernandez says since the surgery, he's been able to do more. His leg has more strength and less pain.
Your leg's okay?
It felt good. I mean, I got worn out during the workout last time, but it felt good afterwards. Yeah.
And in a development that surprised even the doctors, Hernandez experienced entirely new muscle growth in a wound that once cut down to the bone.
Muscle has a little bit of ability to regenerate, but it doesn't have the potential to just grow after a bad injury like this. It usually just forms scars. So we usually don't see any muscle return like this.
Doctors and physical therapist Johnny Owens call Hernandez's muscle growth significant. An isokinetic monitor tests his muscle strength post-surgery.
The numbers that we're seeing are anywhere from 10 to 30%. It really is true, a 30% increase in strength. That's excellent. We're hoping this is true, but it's only one subject, and we'll see as we test more people on this. Come on, back up. Good. Pull the ball back in.
Exercise and testing are ramping up for Hernandez as he readies for a second round of the ECM implantation surgery.
You know, if you get 10, 20% improvement, that's huge. Now, what else can you do with that? Can you do, all these other kinds of tissues that people need for other disease processes?
Okay, well, let's see how it's working today. You want to raise your arm up like this and make a fist.
Meantime, a regenerative game change for another Marine, Josh Maloney in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, who lost his right hand while working with dynamite in the military.
Cold's not doing very good for me.
Can you feel this?
Yeah, I can feel it.
Okay.
Doctors at the University of Pittsburgh transplanted a cadaver's hand onto Josh's arm. Groundbreaking because they managed to eliminate the need for multiple anti-rejection drugs. They did it by transplanting bone marrow from the donor, tricking Josh's body into accepting the hand as his own.
There was a moment in the operating room for Josh where we released the clamps on the arteries and veins to allow the blood flow to come in from the patient into the new hand. And that's a moment that everyone in the operating room holds his or her breath, because you can literally see the white, pale tissue of the donor hand became pink.
The surgery represents another regenerative effort that the U.S. military is funding with amputees in mind.
You know, I get to work with my hands again, which is something I enjoy doing.
For Josh, a new hand has given him a new life. He's apprenticing as an electrician and can feel the work he's doing with both hands.
It doesn't come off, it's real, and I have input. I can tell it to do things, and it can tell me things.
Josh says a prosthetic was never ideal for him because it was painful and bulky.
Because it only did this. You know, I couldn't rotate the fingers or the hand or anything.
Now his new live hand allows him to change light bulbs and fix electrical wires.
The more I use it, the better it gets, yeah.
You daddy's good boy.
What? Back in Texas, Sergeant Harris reflects on the baby steps being taken now that might change even more lives one day.
Makes me feel good to know that I may be on the ground floor, or I am on the ground floor of research that could possibly help thousands, millions of people. I'd say it's a pretty day, but it's cold.
It is chilly.
It's really an overwhelming feeling.